The wedge issue is typically the tool of the out-of-office challenger to a more popular incumbent. And the reason we call it a wedge issue is because of its capacity to drive a wedge between the opponent and their constituency, or between part of their constituency and the other part that you hope to wedge off, break away, much as one might break a log using a wedge, driving it in and splitting the log. You would wedge away some of the support from your opponent and transfer it to yourself. Now, the ideal wedge issue from the standpoint of the politicians, especially Republicans over the last few decades, would be one that would be grounded in fantasy. In other words, something that would not be an actual issue of government, but would nevertheless be controversial, and you could hold the election about that because you were on the right side of the thing. Your opponent would be on the wrong side. What do I mean? Well, a good example would be, say, flag burning. The Supreme Court delivered a number of very unpopular decisions, especially in the late 1960s and early 1970s, regarding our constitutional rights. And the Republicans were able to use a lot of these as imaginary issues on which they would never be held to account in government. In other words, any law they passed on these issues would be a moot point. They'd be unconstitutional. They'd be struck down. So they could very freely, for example, say, I support prison sentences for people who burn the flag, knowing that nobody was going to go to prison, that the courts would strike it down, but that it would nevertheless be very popular with their constituency. Meanwhile, the Democrat incumbent might very well say, well, I'm sworn to uphold the Constitution, and I have to agree with the Supreme Court. They said that there exists this right. We can't punish people for doing this, however much we despise them, on and on and on. They would appear wishy-washy on the issue of flag burning. The Republican could posture themselves as the protector of the flag, and their opponent as the un-American destroyer of the flag. And this was just the perfect kind of issue for them. Similar issues were posting the 10 Commandments in schools. They still use this one to this very day, despite millions of court cases saying you can't force schools to post the 10 Commandments, and you can't require kids to salute the flag. You can't have prayer in school, for example, that's led by a teacher and where the kids are all sat down and where an agent of the state tells them pray in such and such a way. These things are very well settled in the law. Nevertheless, the Republicans will still use these in places in which that position will be very popular, however contrary to the Constitution it is. And of course, this has promoted the polarization of the electorate. It has promoted a gathering of people that fall for this sort of thing into one party, that being the Republican Party. And it's part of that demographic shift that I described in the video, in which I explain how all the racists became congregated in the Republican Party. Therefore, all the low IQ types also became congregated within the Republican Party. And of course, these sorts of wedge issues work very well among uneducated, low-information voters. And that's why Republicans have used them. Now, an issue that was supposed to remain a wedge issue, and it was supposed to remain in the realm of the imaginary, has actually backfired on the Republicans in a big way, because they finally put in office a man of such low intelligence and lack of familiarity with American political history that he actually fell for their own propaganda and actually followed through on something Republicans never intended to do. And of course, I'm talking about Donald Trump and the issue of abortion. And this, I think, is the most interesting topic, and the reason that all these videos that I've done in this series so far are really only set up for the next one, which is Donald Trump and abortion. He didn't understand the playbook that the Republicans were using, and it is going to be disastrous for the Republicans.